Cae el anochecer sobre los techos del mundo y nos armamos de libros, tacitas y lectura combativa. Encendemos el neón para abrir un día más la Biblioteca de Noche. La puerta está entreabierta para que te asomes y nos sintonices por Holística Radio. Se abren las palabras y encendemos nuestras mentes en este espacio radial para compartir el calor de las palabras en compañía de las voces tras los oficios del libro. Te estamos esperando frente a nuestros micrófonos con alta motivación y nuestras agüitas maliciosas de medianoche. ¡Comenzamos!
Le damos la bienvenida a todas, todos y todes a esta nueva entrega de la Biblioteca de Noche, en un programa especial, particular, en un desafío que decidimos tomar junto a la amistad que tenemos con Los Perros Románticos, una editorial que nos ha visitado durante este año y esperamos que se quede. Tenemos una primera entrevista en inglés. Esperamos que se animen a escucharla. Va a tener algunos subtítulos, por supuesto. Y la idea es que también disfruten el idioma, puedan animarse incluso a practicar si quieren, si tienen el interés, pero sobre todo a descubrir la literatura de este invitado que nos acompaña. Para comenzar, como lo hacemos en cada capítulo, ahora les voy a leer una parte del libro que hablaremos, que se los voy a mostrar desde el principio. Es el primer libro de Fragmentos, de Dave Lordan, traducido por Ulises Farlie. Y vamos con una pequeña lectura. Cuando Caitlin se desvistió en el velorio, vi por primera vez toda la isla de Irlanda. Conversaciones sobre Caitlin. Caitlin se quedó mirando fijamente un charco de aceite en un pantano, comparándose con el dinero, los billetes y monedas, peso, textura, forma, circulación y así sucesivamente. Igualmente se olvida de las cosas y en nombre de las cosas. Cualquier cosa que no esté amarrada a ella lo olvida. Por meses la he llamado Caitlin, mi hipoteca. Al igual que el arpa, la mayor parte del tiempo Caitlin no tenía a nadie quien la cargara. Debe permanecer en la casa de los nobles, donde toca para ellos cuando se encuentra arruinada y abatida. En una fiesta, en Dublín, en la que Caitlin se encontraba, se le sugiere un cambio al ukelele. Caitlin miente toda la noche en la fiesta, pero todo el mundo le cree. Es tu rostro, dijo el actor de Donegal, bajo el tejo mientras la encaminaba a su hogar a través del cementerio al amanecer. Los embrujados tan solo asentían. Caitlin recordará el ademán de aquellos la próxima vez que lo vea. Y así iniciamos este programa. Le doy la bienvenida a Viviana, a Dave y a Ulises. Vivi.
Hello, hello, hello. Hola, hola a todos y todas quienes están escuchando este programa especial. As Sebastian said, we're going to try to use English, Spanish. We're really honored because we have the book writer and we have Ulises that help us to read it in our language, this book. So it's really amazing. Thank you very much for the invitation that you accept, guys.
Thank you very much. It was really wonderful to hear it read in Spanish, and I was trying, or in Chilean Spanish, because it sounds quite particular, which wonderful. And to hear the rhythm of it in that language was really, really good experience for me. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's great.
Muchísimas gracias también por la invitación. Un honor también para mí poder estar acá compartiendo con ustedes. So thank you very much, Dave, as well for your work. And this is going to be amazing. So the book is amazing as well. I hope you guys love it. So thank you very much. Muchas gracias, Viviana and Sebastian, for this opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome, guys.
Yeah. We have I have to say I am a little nervous because it's our first interview in this language, but it's
Yeah.
a very beautiful challenge, and we try to um, speak the better we can. Bibi is actually live in Canada and have more experience. And for start, we have to ask our first question in all interview we do in this program. Could you please introduce yourself, Dave? Who are you? What do you do? And what are your recent obsessions? We need
Oh
to
my.
know that.
Okay, really, that's really good. That's a really good question. I mean, my name is Dave Lordan, right? And the Lordan family name has around 1,000-year history at least in the around the European continent, right? Comes from Norway. Ultimately, it's a Norman. The first recording is around 1000 as Lordain, right? Then through Spain and down to Sicily. Of course, the Normans conquered Sicily, parts of Italy. The Loredano family becomes important in Venice. Bellini painted the Doge Loredano of Venice. The family comes into West Cork by way of smuggling, contrabandieri in Italian, I believe. And I assume around 1750, some Venetian fell in love with an Irish, a beautiful Irish person, and here I am, right? And I was very lucky as a human being, really, in many ways. I was born in one of the parts of the world which defeated the British Empire. Soundly, roundly, and completely defeated the British Empire in a few years. The part of the country I come from had we had 600 under arms. We had 600 guerrillas. But of course everybody was behind the guerrillas. Everybody, 90%. And so half of the British Army in Ireland was there were 44,000 British troops. 24,000 of them were in my little region, and we won. So that's the real important historical fact, which I think helps me to be optimistic. Right, number one. Okay, I grew up. We had a terrible post-colonial experience in Ireland. Even though we defeated the British Empire, we were then defeated ourselves by a combination of the British Empire and our own reaction. Famously represented by the assassination of Michael Collins, for example, who was assassinated 10 miles from my village, and everybody, it's a mystery in the rest of Ireland who shot him. In my village, everybody claims to have shot him, so it's a kind of a distinct region in that sense. So the post-colonial experience is very disappointing, very repressive, and so on and so forth. War breaks out again in the late 1960s in the north. And I grew up under the shadow of this war and under the shadow of the Reaganomic depression, the Milton Friedman era, which you know all about in Chile. And so my writing comes out of the contradiction of the victory, right, resulting in such a profound defeat, right, in many ways. And again, my generation begins to repair the damage of post-colonialism. I mean, we have overthrown the church in ideologically completely. Completely. It is Ulises can tell you we are not very Catholic in Ireland anymore. Okay, you must believe it is a big transformation. Okay, in a very short time. Okay, in my village in 1987. Okay, if you didn't go to mass, the priest read your name. In school, you were punished, you were beaten because you didn't go to mass, etc., etc., etc.
Really?
So we have very quick transformation. Yeah. So the sense of things happening very quickly in a very fragmented way, and also with the contradiction of neoliberalism. Okay, because that is why Ireland is rich now. Okay. Basically, Milton Friedman made us rich, right? So this is a kind of contradiction, right? And of course, the dream of the Irish Revolution, the reason my great grandmother, picked up a rifle, okay, it wasn't for neoliberalism. You understand? It was basically for we would call it, I guess, socialism, but what that is in the mind of a peasant in 1919, it's hard for us to appreciate now, I think, and certainly she, she did not foresee the 20th century and what happened to that world, etc. But you know what I'm talking about. So this huge contradictions, we have big social victory, we have terrible, we have big victory against the British Empire, which is studied by Ho Chi Minh and Che Guevara and everybody else, as an example, and Tito, okay, etc. We were the school for that type of thing, and yet, the church was raping children, selling babies. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
trying to figure that out is my life, my writing, I guess. Yeah.
Wow, such a trip. I think we have similarities between the history of our country, Chile and Ireland, because it's always fighting with capitalism. We're full of contradictions. Now we're in a moment to change our constitution, so it's a really empowered moment. So thank you very much to share that with us.
That is one of the best things that has happened in the world, the Chilean social movement of the last few years, So thank you for giving everybody else a little bit of hope. It's very important. Okay. Things like that, they have no borders, So
Yeah.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. And Ulises, you tell us, please present yourself to the audience.
Yeah, so thank you, Viviana, Sebastian, for this opportunity. My name is Ulises Farlie. Tracking back my history as well about my surname. I think my great-great-grandfather came to Chile. I don't know, maybe he was British, I don't know, Scottish or Irish, or I don't know. But it's from that part of the world. He was a farmer back there. He came from Liverpool until Valparaiso, and from Valparaiso then he settled down in Santiago, I think. Then after a few generations, I'm just mimicking something like as Dave introduction as well. But that was part of my history, but I don't know any of it. I don't have any relatives back in I don't know if it's in Ireland, England, or Scotland. I don't know. The thing is, little by little, I am 29 years old, and I at the beginning I started music. I started to play the guitar, but I dropped out because it was too heavy for me. It was like to be an athlete or something like that, to be a footballer, something like that. Afterwards, I say, okay, I'm going to spend my time on another thing. I want to study another thing, and then I studied translation. But it was a technical thing about filling forms, like scientific things. Very, very technical. It was good. I learned a lot. But the thing is, okay, this is not fulfilling my desires. My father is a teacher, Spanish teacher. So at home, we used to read a lot. And he used to tell me a lot of very good stories. And then I said to myself, okay, I want to translate but literature. I mean, translating scientific things. It was good. I learned a lot, but it wasn't too touching for me. So the thing is, okay, I want to translate literature. I found a book about Charles Bukowski. I started to read it. Okay, I want to translate this. It was quite fun until I have the opportunity to meet Dave and Los Perros Románticos, which is another story. Of course, we are going to speak about it later, but that's part of my story.
It's amazing how similar the story of you are. Like Dave tell us that start reading with your grandma, right? I remember because it's the same name of my mom, Julia. And Ulysses is also, you have the motivation from your family to get this. Now, my question comes, how do you end up with the book of Dave?
That is a nice story. Very nice story. Yes. I mean, do you want me to tell it, or maybe we can share the story with Dave as well?
You can both can just tell us.
Let me. I'll tell you up until the point I met Ulysses, and then Ulysses can take it there. How about that? That's probably the easiest, right?
All right.
I was live streaming some interviews with a group of strikers, who were, I think it was Debenhams strikers, who were women workers who were denied redundancy in a very horrible way. Yeah. And so I was walking up the street, and at the Spire in Dublin, I saw the Chilean flags and the slogans and so on of the rebellion, and I was aware of the situation, because it's the kind of thing I'm generally aware of, and obviously very, very happy to see the Chilean people rise up. And so I just went and joined in and started streaming, and Ulysses said, "Hi, how are you?" And that's Ulysses can take over now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, that was quite beautiful, because it was right in the same date of the social outbreak here in Chile. I was there in Ireland, because I went there in 2019 for to study English, to perfect polish my English, everything. I had the opportunity to work there, so there was a lot of compatriots, a lot of Chilean folks as well. And then the social outbreak, a lot of the Chilean community, we met at the Spire, which is like the Plaza de Armas in Santiago, something like that.
It was
yeah, sorry?
It was impressive. The gathering, it looked impressive.
Yeah, you do. I mean, we were a lot of people, a lot of Chilean folks, and also South American people as well, supporting us. Yes, Argentinian, Brazilians, Colombians, a lot of other nationalities. The thing is, Dave came up, and I thought he was like a journalist. Yeah, like an independent journalist or something like that.
Just know what it's like. No.
Yeah, so Dave started to ask me some questions about what is this about, what is happening in Chile. So a brief explanation about everything, about, well, once again, Milton Friedman, neoliberalism. Yeah. And then I asked Dave, Dave, can you give me the video you recorded, just to have like a souvenir or something? Yeah. And okay, just find me on Facebook. All right. So I typed Dave Lordan, and the thing is, I discovered that Dave Lordan was a very successful writer, and I thought to myself, okay, this is the opportunity. Yes, that was how it started.
So the final was the book, but you get in touch by politics, yeah, that's awesome.
Yes, it was a beautiful coincidence. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's wonderful, and yeah, I mean, to be translated is a really, really, really nice experience. Believe me, I mean, first of all, obviously, it's a compliment, in the sense that somebody believes in your work, that they are going to work probably harder than I did on the book. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that is the case sometimes with the translator. Like I write short pieces. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course I edit them and work on them. You know what I mean? But it would be hard to call it work. really. You know what I mean? You know, it's really, I enjoy it. You know what I mean? I'm not one of these writers who, you know, complains about how hard it is or anything like that. But I believe translation is a lot more difficult than writing.
Yeah,
So,
it's a lot more difficult. But
but from that point of view, for me, it's, you know, it's just amazing that someone would translate your book. And then also because, you know, if I think it's a book that, first of all, it would not exist if I had not read the Chilean writer Roberto Bolaño. Okay, it simply does not exist. Okay, and then it ends up through all of these chance, you know, these chance events. Chance, I don't know. I somehow believe that maybe Roberto Bolaño was involved in all of this. Okay, from
Yeah.
the scenes, right? That's what I would like to believe, right? In a literary heaven, you know, and that it ends up being published by a book called Los Perros Románticos, which in Europe is the name of the collection of Bolaño's poetry, which I'm shocked to have to say, I don't think he's a very good poet. You know, I think 2666 is the best novel since Finnegan's Wake, you know, something like that. It's impossible to say how good it is, right? It's one of these, oh my God, books, right? When I read 266, I was in Italy. I was in a library one day reading. I had to close it because I was afraid I was falling into it, you understand? And that if I fell into this book, I would never come out. Okay, I felt that the encounter with that book for me was transformative in a way that, you know, few books have been. I would say maybe Proust, Joyce, you know, the Book of Revelations when I was 4 and my grandmother taught me, something like that.
yeah,
But it's up there with, you know, for me, it's, so I was transformed as an artist, as a thinker, in many ways, by my encounter with Roberto Bolaño. Yeah, so it really, and I mean, you know, it's hard to see an influence of Bolaño, I think, in the tone or the style or the text of the book, you know, but in a way about the world and what the writer has to do, right? And the real situation, you know, not the dream one, you know, but the real one, you know. And Bolaño's position as an ex-Trotskyist, right? Which basically the Trotskyists were really the last serious bunch of people to believe that humanity could be saved by an international proletarian revolution, right? And part of what 2666 is really it's a lament for the death of Trotskyism, basically, in one way, which is the death of the human dream of self-emancipation, right? Under late capitalism, that's what it is, right? And when that dream of self-emancipation dies, right, and we're still here, you know, and teleology has divested itself, you know, from our lives, right? Then what does a writer do, you know? How should we try to tell the truth? You know, if the truth is something which has gone beyond expression, as so many have said, right?
Yeah.
it's
It's,
so weird
I,
that
I
you
think,
mentioned Roberto, sorry, Sebastian, Roberto Bolaño, because Roberto Bolaño is very important writer in my hometown because he studied there in Los Angeles, in Chile, in the 8th region. And I remember that, like, what? We have like a writer? Because my city is not a big one, and that always caught my attention. And then we start learning about himself. So I'm sure that guy has something to do with this meeting and this
yeah.
interview.
Yeah, wow, it's very amazing these connections because Bolaño is taken in prison in the time of Pinochet. I don't know,
Yeah.
dictadura. How say dictadura, Vivi?
Dictatorship, like dictator
Dictatorship.
time.
Bolaño is going in prison in Los Angeles, the town, the Viviana town,
Hometown.
and yeah, and have to do with all his imagination in his book all the time. Use
By complete chance, he is rescued because his father knows one of the fucking guards, right? That's it, right? So he's let out.
yeah.
So again,
Yeah.
Now you can talk about a series of miracles here, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. And the fact, Ulises, his name is Ulises, like the book of Job.
Yeah.
This
Everything is a beautiful
yeah,
coincidence. Yes.
yeah. This is providing me with great boasting in Ireland. You know, my translator's name is, you know.
It's a beautiful
And I say,
thing.
of course, my translator's name is Ulises.
There.
I like to wind people up over here, you know. So a bit of boasting it can make people angry. It's quite funny, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dave, we speak with Viviana about your ideas and all the things we can read in this book around your ideas before I start to read the stories and your tales, and we choose some words, and please tell us what comes to your mind when you try to define these words. I start with some beautiful word in this moment, and then maybe 5 or 6 words more. We start with
ad lib,
politics.
right?
Huh?
Ad lib. We ad lib. First thing we think.
Yeah.
First, what do you think, and tell us more if you have to speak. It's not only one answer. Yeah. Well, we start with politics.
Okay. The word
what
politics.
In your mind, the word politics?
Politics. What is left of politics is our organization of salvage, right? What can we rescue, right? We need to focus on salvage and self-emancipation, and the politics of the near future will be about how to retreat from the cities and to live really in a very, very narrow, and much more narrowly is set up for human beings in terms of food supply and all that kind of thing. Politics is going to we're entering into the Stone Age period of politics.
Yeah. Well, the next, climate crisis.
Me again?
Yeah. You
Okay.
again.
I think it's optimistic and an underestimate to talk about the climate crisis. We have, in fact, a bio crisis, right? We have a crisis of the conditions of life on planet Earth, right? And that is we also have, which my book is really about, to be honest with you, a metaphysical crisis, you know, because of course the collapse of the climate and the collapse of what we call civilization renders humanity an absurd species, and all dreams and hopes and plans and books and enlightenments and everything else, right? You know, for example, take the idea of United Ireland, right? By even the most optimistic scenarios, right, which are far too optimistic, Ireland will be an archipelago of a couple of hundred islands, you know, in 200 years or 100 years. So to talk about United Ireland is now, you know, it's a comedy, you know, because it changes everything. It renders history. It renders history absurd.
Everything. Yeah. Well, Ulises, tell us about literature world.
About this word, or about the word literature?
The
What
word
comes to your mind?
literature.
The word literature. All right. The first thing that comes to my mind is history, literature, history, recorded history, and memories, and home as well. Yeah. For me, those concepts, I think, are the most suitable ones, according to me, of course. But with literature, yes, is everything in the world is history. Yeah, and it reminds me as well.
Thank you. And then the next for you, Ulises, too, is Bible, because we know about in this book tell us some about that Bible, and maybe
Bible.
what do you think the relations David with Bible? I don't know.
Well, there's a specific part. Yeah, I remember something that's about a short story of a book. But okay, the word Bible. The word Bible is fictional history, but it's still history for some people. Yeah, for those who are Catholics or for those who are Christians, of course. And it's an interesting book. I never read it, but it's an interesting book as well. But yeah, there's a very specific part of the book that Dave wrote a short history in the first book of Rex, and he quoted, I remember, about a Revelations quote, I think, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, correct me, Dave, if I'm wrong. But
yeah, right now, but because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will begin to vomit thee out of my mouth. Right? Revelation 3:16.
Exactly.
Neither cold nor hot.
Exactly.
Lukewarm.
Thanks. Now, Dave, tell us about in the same line the other word, climate genocide. You speak about climate genocide.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, look, we have to be careful about words like genocide because they're thrown left, right, and center now at the moment. And it's always important to remember that when we talk about genocide, the major one, of course, is the Holocaust of the Second World War. Then we are talking about the Armenians. Then we are talking about the Native Americans on both the north and the south of the continent. Genocide has been stalking the earth for a very, very long time. Genocide as in the deliberate murder of a people, okay, for the purpose of wiping them out, okay. Against the Irish, you can talk about an attempted genocide, several attempted genocides which failed, right? Because we still have our language and our culture, and our traditions are living traditions. We don't have a fossilized music or a fossilized literature, which is the fate of those who have been genocided. Okay. Now, climate genocide. Yeah, well, let's wait and see. That's what I would say, because I'm not saying we're all going to die, right? Or we're going to lose or anything like that. Okay. But, we're going to have to all be very, very strong to get through it, and maybe we won't be genocided, maybe we won't. I don't know. We're going to have to fight very hard not to be. That's for sure, So genocide has stalked the earth for a very, very long time. The climate, as most of the best thinkers and talkers on this, they will date really the environmental attack, if you like, to the expansion of capitalism into South America and Africa and so on and so forth. That was what really accelerated, the poisoning of the planet, and also besides that wiped out. Which is clear, for example, if you read David Graeber's recent book, about prehistory, that it was also wiping out alternative ways of living, alternative philosophies. The Irish Celtic law, Brehon law, restorative justice, better for women, right? No prisons. You know what I mean? It's a better system of law than we now have, right? So the loss of all that, the loss of all the languages, right? It means we are condemned anyway to be the descendants of a genocidal planet, right? And we will always be haunted by the absent, okay? The population of Ireland, 1841, 1840, who knows exactly? Lots of poor people living in very small places up in the hills, something like 10 million, something like 11 million, okay? It's now 7 million. We're the only country in the world which has less people living in it than 200 years ago, right? A demographic freak, right? Because of the famine, so-called, and the immigration and the poverty after that. The population had grown at the same rate as England's. We would have the same population as England, basically now 40, 50 million, So I'm always thinking about all of these people, that should be here, but they're not. That's
Thank
genocide.
you. Thank you for that. You shared some reflections, and is the time we live now. Now in Siberia or Korea have problems, and well, it's the world we live, and maybe we can think what you say. We are responsible about this, and we have to fight a lot for change these things. And well,
And in Chile, you have become experts on how to fight, right? So teach the rest of the world.
Yeah, maybe, maybe.
You have,
but
you have changed a lot very quickly. Okay, and
Yeah.
that is the only choice we have. Change a lot very quickly. No time for anything else. So that's it.
And that's the thing. I think in Chile we have been in that state of hopeless so much time that it's difficult to us to acknowledge how far have we come to this new constitution. So it's like that learned hopeless that we have. And that's why I understand the answer of Sebastian. Like, yeah, because always something happens. We have recent memories about the dictator. So that's why it's difficult, but that's why we create a special shows, a special episode in Holística Radio to talk about the new constitution, because there is a lot of fake news, and that's the first step to acknowledge, inform, talk.
Big job. Yeah.
Thank you.
Big important job for sure.
Thank you. And we live all these years learned about how so little we have a very little relevance in the world. Maybe it's not
Not that
so
little.
not a little, yeah. And I'm thinking all the time, all the people say our personality, like Chileans, are very naive, very soft, very. We don't have the skills to fight, and now maybe can change.
Yeah.
That.
But everybody
Yeah.
always says that about people who have been oppressed for a long time. They've forgotten how to fight. Remember, I remember in 2009, people telling me that Arab people were just like sheep; they would never do anything. And 2 years later, they, nearly. It's always nearly, unfortunately, right? But they nearly made a serious revolution. Nearly. And that was very important. After the Egyptian revolution, I think the Chilean events were the next kind of big hopeful thing in the world. So yeah.
Have a responsibility, but well, for this interview, I have to ask one more word. Could you both tell us what comes to your mind with the word Chile? We need to know how you.
Oh, well, Chile, of course, one of the main events in the tragedy of the proletariat, right? 1973, we know about the election of the socialist governments, the attempt of the socialist government to implement great social equality programs, improving literacy, helping the poor farmers, helping the people, all that type of thing. And we know that the reaction was organized from both inside and outside the country. And we might say, as an outsider, because it's easy to say as an outsider that, maybe Pinochet should have given the people guns, that probably, or not Pinochet, what's his name? Allende, right? Maybe he should have put out the guns and maybe you wouldn't have lost, So, but that's spilled milk, right? That spilled milk. The bravery of the Chilean people and the advance that the Chilean people made was also absolutely fantastic, right? Of course, then you have Neruda, okay, who sort of, shall we say, dominates certainly the left wing global poetry scene, if that's such a thing, certainly in the mid to late 20th century, with good reason a lot of the time. Okay. And then of course there's Bolano, who is for me again the presiding literary genius of the 21st century, who has come. So I mean, you've got a lot going for you, right? And in my opinion, in terms of culture, right, and in terms of contribution to the world, I have no negative associations with Chile whatsoever. I also don't have a stereotype of Chilean people because I don't think European people have a stereotype. Maybe we do have Brazilians or Argentinians, but I don't know. You need to win more World Cups. You know what I mean? Before the European gets too interested in general. Yeah. But let me see. Wasn't Bernardo O'Higgins, was he involved in Chile? Back in the day when
he was. Yes, he was from the Irish ancestors. Yeah.
So the Irish had some involvement in your liberation struggle as well. Which is nice, right? I'm sure they were also involved on the other side. Of course, right? But we like to remember the good ones. Yeah. So I mean, I have no negative. Everything that Chile has ever done to me has been really, really good, I have to say. So yeah.
Nice.
It brings a smile to my face. What can I say? Chile, right?
Great.
Yeah.
Great news for us. Yeah.
And Ulises, for you.
What comes to my mind is more than just one word. It's love, hate, and hope. Love, because of course I was born in this country. I have my family. I have my people here. I've got everything. I've got food. I got drinks here, which I love as much as Irish beer as well. So, but hate, because I hate some part of our history. I hate some. What comes to my mind again? Politics, as you said before, Sebastian. Of course, part of this politics that is rotten, right? It's rotten, and we need to change it. And that is when the word hope come to play, because we need hope. I have hope. I have hope because part of this politics that is rotten, they are running out of time, and we need to change it. Everything. We need to, from the scratch, we are building this country once again. And that is the way it is. As Dave told us before, I mean, crisis can be taken as an opportunity, or it could be something necessary. Something that maybe us, the rest of the world, we don't like it. We don't want to move from our couch. We don't want to move from our home. But it's necessary to do it. After the crisis, sometimes there is hope. And that's what it is. And that is what it comes to my mind. The word Chile.
Yeah, it's not that simple, that just one word. I get that feeling too.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
It's easier to do that from the outside, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
of course.
Very different. Well, we need to know now, because we know you, Dave. You, the only thing you do is not write. You do all other things, and we need to know. And all the people listen now this interview. Tell us about your recent work. What do you do now in the arts, in the creativity? Your
well, I mean, I think the first thing is that, like, I don't know. I grew up in this. You could almost call it the tail end of an oral tradition, right? My neighborhood, they had all, because they were working class people, and you didn't get an education if you were a working class person in Ireland until the 1970s. So a lot of the people I grew up among, very, very, very intelligent people. If you want to survive the apocalypse, they're the right people, right? But they weren't. They didn't have a high level of official education, But they love to sing and to whistle and to tell jokes and to tell stories. You know what I mean? the circus arrived in the field across from me. Okay, every summer, 5, 6, 7, 8 circuses. Okay, one of the first illegal raves in Ireland was held in the field across from me in 1988. You understand? So I was always like multimedia, has always been there. You know what I mean, as far as I'm concerned. And I never really thought that there's a kind of a hard border between different things which involve, and there never was naturally for me anyway. So I'm just interested in creativity. I love performing. I love collaborative creativity. One of the things I did recently, and I'm really, really looking forward to this, I made a little tiny micro documentary, 5 minutes long, about a group of traveller women. Traveller is our ethnic minority in Ireland, indigenous minority. We're very proud of them. And I made a little just about women who run their own knitting company, right? To be independent, right? Because female independence is a very important thing, obviously, and it's very important within the traveller community as well. And so that's going to be on at the conference in NUIG, which is the first conference about traveller rights and history, because of course they suffered terribly in the post-colonial period, more terribly than anybody else, as you can imagine. So but they're fighting back now, and I'm very happy to be standing behind them and beside them like that. I recently, what else did I do recently? I wrote 2 books, I'd say, in the last 2 years. So it was one was a collaborative poetry book called Back to Normal, with my long-term artistic partner Carl Parkinson, who's a bit like me. He writes books, all kinds of things. We wrote a joint book on the idea that now after the pandemic we're back to normal. So what was normal, and so on. So that a book about that, right? And then the year before, I published a book of poems called Medium, which is I really consider one of the things that you do as a poet is you communicate with the dead, and you communicate for the dead to an extent, you make a bridge between the dead and the living, So, and of course, that's the medium of the title, and that was a kind of a consideration of the haunting of contemporary existence, basically. And then I am writing memoirs, so I had a good bit of memoir published and translated into German and Italian, I think, about that rave I was telling you about in 1988, for example. Okay. And so I do podcasts, videos, performances, you name it, right? And so lots of different things. And I enjoy them all, and I don't do them according to any sort of plan, right? Or, I don't know what I'm going to do next year. I go with what's around, I sometimes, visual artists or, conceptual artists, I'll be involved in something with them in a minor way. I make a reading for them or something like that. So there's always something.
Restless work, huh?
Yeah, but you know what William Blake says, the busy bee has no time for sorrow, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're certainly right. Yeah.
And it's not work, you see, I'm not
when you like it doesn't feel like work.
You know what I mean? I'm not a person who thinks I have a job, or a career or anything like that. I have compulsions and pleasures, and really it's the erotics of the thing that enjoys me because I enjoy it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I have fun. It makes me happy, to write lovely sentences and read poems in front of people. And I never ever have felt that it was work for 1 second, because I happen to know what actual work actually is, right? So I started on building sites, right, and in bakeries and all that type of thing when I was a child. It's not even legal now, the work that I had to do. I started working at 13 in bakeries and things like that, right? So when I hear writers talking about how difficult their life is and how hard it was to write the book, I just laugh. I have to be honest. I think they're so ridiculous. I have to be honest with you. Because it's fun. For me, it's fun. I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it. It's not a choice. I was born like this. Can't help it. Also, I could talk for Ireland if there was an Olympics for talking, right? So, good luck with anything.
I enjoy listening all what do you say, because I feel the same way. I love all the thing I do, and don't feel like work. And it's a little space of happiness, and maybe we can share that, and it's very important for this world. For this world.
Why poetry is beautiful, right? Literature is beautiful. You know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really beautiful thing to do, to be involved in it, and aren't we lucky? You know, because we haven't been affected by the general amnesia, right? We're quite lucky, you know, right?
Yeah.
I work with an awful lot of young people, you know, and we're all roughly, I'd say, from a similar generation or generations. You know, people don't read the classics or anything like that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, full stop. You know, so to be able to have this discussion, you know, and to talk, make references to Book of Revelations, make references to Belano, and so on and so forth. I mean, you know, it's becoming a quite rarefied thing, unfortunately. You know, but hopefully it won't for too long.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Vivi?
We really like to hear more from you. And we know that you have a podcast. Can you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, I went to a party. It's called the Dead Friends, and to a party in 1993, around Halloween, October, right, in West Cork, in a village called Dunmanway, 12 miles from my village, right. And everybody from the hills and the mountains and the valleys goes to the nightclub. You know, it's not like a sophisticated city nightclub, right? Bit of a crazy place, all ages, you know, many drunk people, etc., etc., etc. Many people kissing, you know, all of that kind of thing. A lot of fun, right? And in October in Ireland, we are very lucky because our grassy fields produce a wonderful mushroom known as the psilocybin mushroom, okay, which again is a quite popular pastime in the autumn, you know, in Ireland, among, to be honest with you, all kinds of people, you know. So, like, it's not just young people or anything like that, or not just bohemians, you know. It's quite people, a lot of people do it, you know. And so we took too many of those, you know, way too many. We were young, we were stupid, 17, 18, 19, you know. And I was supposed to meet a girl at the nightclub who I was in love with. She was a cure head and I was a cure head. You know, Robert Smith, the Cure, right? So I had lipstick, everything, you know, 1992. And so I was, and you know, it was before the internet, and I couldn't telephone her because her father would kill her if she found out about me, understand, right? Etc. You know, so I couldn't telephone her. So for 2 weeks, oh my God, I hope she comes to the nightclub. I hope she comes to the nightclub. I hope she comes. I can't wait. I mean, I was in love, you know, and really in love. And okay, so we take all these mushrooms before the disco, and I go to the disco, and every girl in the disco is her, you know. That's what I see, every single girl, right? And then they all start to grow horns, right? And then the nightclub goes on fire, right? And I have to keep dancing, or else the devil is going to kill me, right? And my friend saved me. It's a very simple solution, you know. You drink orange juice, right? You drink orange juice, and it just completes antidote for psilocybin. I mean, in 2 minutes, you don't have any problems anymore. Okay, so he saved me. He later died in prison of a heroin overdose. You know, he was doing 15 years in prison at the time, and he died of a heroin overdose. And the other 3 boys, we were boys. We were not really men. We were boys, and they all died in the 90s also from suicide, drugs, alcohol, and there's no trace of them on the internet. Not one trace, right? Except, you know, crime reports, okay, etc. Right? In the names that they didn't have really, because we all had completely different. We all, in where I'm from, in my village, you have a name on your birth cert, and then your friends give you your real name. You know what I mean? So, you know, when I came across it, it was the first time I had seen his name in his funeral notice, right? Nobody knew his real name until the funeral notice, right? So it was about them, about how they died, and remembering them, and kind of in the frame, I suppose, of Jim Morrison's 5 to 1, baby, 1 in 5 no one here gets out alive. And I did a meditation on the the domination of death in the Irish landscape. You know what I mean? Because we had a very astronomical suicide rate in the 1990s and the noughties, and literally astronomical, as in fast suicide and slow suicide, right? Slow suicide is, drink or speed or whatever, It's still suicide, right? So that's what that was about. Remembering them, I felt that I feel, I'm quite theological in my sense of what literature can do, in the sense that the only possible resurrection that you can have, even if it's just in text and in imagination, is the one that happens when, somebody listens to that podcast and hears about those people for the first time, right? That's them, in some sense, remaining present in life, in existence, and that's very important to me, because I don't think anything else can do that, I don't think, I went to Christy Moore would be my main inspiration in Ireland as an artist, as an Irish artist, and at one of his concerts, he played a song there, and he thought it was 1,000 years old, right? Or sorry, 2,000 or 3,000 years old, right? And it was originally written in Aramaic, okay, which is a disappeared language, right? Translated into Gaelic, I think, and then into English. And he sings it, and we all love the song, and tears come to people's eyes, and they hop up, and that for me there's something happening there which nothing else can do. That people who are dead for 3,000 years, who spoke a dead language, something from their soul has entered into my soul. That is the only way to describe it, by means of the transfer of the passions. That's what you do with literature. You transfer passion from one soul to another. That's what I believe you're trying to do in it. So that's what the podcast is about. And there's a lot of stuff in it about 80s alternative youth culture, early raves, real raves, like, right? Check them out on YouTube. You didn't have to pay to get into them. There was no police until we had to, etc. There was nothing like that. We had great times. It was a great time in one sense. I know I talk about suicide rate, but the music we had was just, we had The Cure, and we had the Smiths, and we had The Fall, and we had Kate Bush, and we had the Cocteau Twins, and I can list 200, 300 bands, which, if they were playing today, would be the best band in the world. You know what I mean? By a million miles. So we were very lucky. We had a very good youth culture. We had a very rebellious youth culture. We were very political, we were very countercultural. We were gender fluid, in the villages of the west of Ireland in 1985 because of Boy George and Robert Smith and David Bowie, so all of those kind of things are also involved in how basically the culture of the 1980s interacted with the culture of at the very edge of civilization, really, Europe, where I grew up, which has lots of interesting things happen in that situation, right? So that's what the podcast is about. Then a lot of just about my region as well, which is storied and very, very long time populated, and visited by the Phoenicians, many centuries ago, and part of the international world of trade and literature and love, obviously, because there would be no Lordans otherwise, I guess, and so on. So all of those things, together. But mainly, my main idea was, I don't want my friends to be forgotten, right?
Yeah.
And I have the power. Exactly. I am the only one in their lives. Of course, they have other beautiful people in their lives that miss them, right? That can do other things for them. But the writer is the only one that can do what I did. And I think, for me, I feel a kind of responsibility in that regard.
Yeah, as was at the beginning of the episode, literature, I think it was Ulises' memory. It's to bring, and as you said, to deliver that passion. And it's really fascinating to listen to you, Dave. And I can see how Ulises is like at the same level of fascination. I would like to ask you, Ulises, how was the process of translation? That video calls, you have like a document and you make notes, or tell us a little bit like the backstage of this.
Yeah, well, this is I think is a very very important piece of information that we just met with Dave face to face, just once. Yeah,
Yeah.
during that interview, and then until today, it's just emails. Lately, it's been WhatsApps, but only emails. You know, we got a couple of calls regarding the terminology to solve some problems regarding the translation, which was quite challenging, quite very very challenging because the Hiberno English, is another story. As they address us at the beginning with the Chilean Spanish, okay, it's something similar, with Hiberno English. So you've got a lot of beautiful words and slang from Ireland exclusively. So it was quite challenging, and there is another way to speak there as well, in comparison to the standard English, I think. So it was very, very challenging,
Really?
but it was a beautiful work as well, because it was a lot of creativity that comes to your mind. You have to put your feet on the ground. Okay, how do I say this naturally? That was the most difficult part, to be natural regarding the text. That is the most difficult part. And I said to Dave at the beginning, when I proposed him the translation, I said to him, okay, I want to translate some of the work, but I don't want to translate poetry, because that is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Poetry is beautiful, but it's extremely difficult. And I'm not a very poetry person, so I don't know any of it. I mean, I know the classic, I know how beautiful it is, but it's extremely difficult to translate poetry. So I asked Dave, okay, please give me some of your short stories or narrative or something like that, because I read about your poetry with Dave, and any kind of poetry has its own particular way to write. So it's extremely difficult to translate poetry. You need to be a poet to translate poetry. So yeah. So, but it was quite difficult and challenging, but beautiful process to translate Dave's work and translation into literature. This is my first work in literature, so it's quite exciting and challenging, as I told you before.
Nice. Thank you, Lisa. Is your first book translated to Spanish, Dave?
To Spanish, yeah, I mean little bits and pieces in the past. I have selected poems in Italian. Yeah, I've had a lot of translation into Gaelic. I have a Gaelic translator. I have been translated into, let me see, Arabic. And that was really cool. Okay, I have to say, right, that. Well, of course, I have no idea if the translation is good or not, but the poet who translated it was a very good Palestinian poet, Ibrahim Nasrallah, right? And it appeared in the Al-Quds newspaper in Egypt, and I was very proud of that. But to have prose translated, this is the first time prose has been translated, actually. Really, yeah. So that's really cool, right? And I mean, I just want to come in on the question of poetry or prose. I mean, really, some of these pieces are, without doubt, probably better described as prose poems. So I'm not sure it was any less challenging to translate some of these than it would have been to translate poems. But I do at least some poems, and I do on the other hand agree with Ulises, and I think it's the kind of honesty that we need in literature, that really, a poet has to translate poetry, because there are certain it is to do with the acoustics of the piece, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And the sound of the piece, and there's just a different kind of neurological processing that goes on with a poem, that it is a result of a lot of practice, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And is hard to, and becomes natural, put it like that, right? And I would think even, you know, poetry for me is the real difficult art, really. You know what I mean? So like, you know, it takes 20, 30 years to become good at poetry. You know? So, you know, maybe 15 if you're a genius, you know, but like it's a long, long time and a lot of reading. And it's a really, again, it is a neurological way of processing language that it comes after a lot of practice. But then we look at someone like Joyce. So is Finnegan's Wake a poem or a novel, or, you know, I mean, so, you know, some writers have obviously been able to do both. Okay. Yeah, but again, I want to congratulate Ulysses because I think he is being a little bit humble, you know, because you know, look, there are so many references in this book, right? And there are so many things to do with Irish history, okay, Irish inflections, and really not even Irish, you know, I mean, Southwest Ireland, you know what I mean? And all of that, right? Which is, again, historically a different kingdom, you know what I mean, and all that kind of thing, right? So yeah, and that kind of wordplay, right? You know, which varies between being playful, you know, and sadistic in the book, right? And again, one of Roberto de Bolaños, you know, so I mean, I appreciate Ulysses' honesty, but I also point out he's been a little bit humble because I think it was very hard work because it's a difficult text like that, working on it, you know, in a similar way to poems on a couple of levels a lot of the time, you know. And yeah, so that's great, right? That was great work. It's a hard work, and to have an object, you know, in the world, right, which I can hold in my hand, you know, and show to my daughter, who, you know, who's not the least bit impressed by the fact I'm a writer, you know. It's, what does that mean, you know? Makes me feel really good, that kind of thing, you know. I'm a very basic person, you know.
Great. Well, Dave, Ulises, how do you say we have a little time for finish this interview, and I need to interrupt you because I need to say in Spanish to our listener que estamos hablando de este libro. Por si no lo recuerdan, porque lo dijimos al principio, no lo hemos vuelto a nombrar, que creo que es bueno volver a nombrarlo. El libro se llama Primer Libro de Fragmentos de Dave Lordan por Perros Románticos. Si nos están viendo por YouTube, si nos están escuchando en Spotify, pueden buscar en Instagram, ¿sí? En su página web también a Perros Románticos para encontrar este libro del que estamos hablando hoy. Quería hacer esa acotación. I need to do that because remind our listener the book we speak now in this interview. Vivi, tell me, you have to say something before the last question.
Who me?
Yes.
Oh, Vivi. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, tell us.
No, I'm listening to you. Yeah.
So, okay. So it's the number 8. Sorry, this is out of the program. It's the number 8, Sebastian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Only if you have something to say, because I maybe I share the last question now. Finally, we have almost the last question and invitation. Tell us, to us, Dave, to them, or listeners, any disclaimer, a manifest, a perspective you want to share. What you want for close this interview, and the people maybe have some reason to think today or to laugh or whatever. The mic is yours. I don't know, it's in English it's the same. But...
Okay. Again, what I would really like to have is people reading the book, right? Obviously, especially reading the book out loud, you know. I love to hear that. I think that's a really good thing to do, and I think the book might work better for people out loud as well, right? Because I've just listened to you reading it, and it sounded wonderful to me, you know. And I don't know, I didn't know what you were saying, right? So I guess that's going to work. And just to frame it for people, right? Frags, the original title, refers to a practice, mutinous practice in the American Army in Vietnam around the year 1972. Fragging was the name of rank and file soldiers murdering. Well, murdering is the wrong word. Executing, justifiably, very justifiably executing their officers, who of course were, getting them killed for no reason. And it's called frags because, of course, what they did was sometimes they would put the grenade under the bed of the officer and he would be fragmented, put it like that. And then the sense of the Humpty Dumpty world we live in, right? All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. That things are really flying apart, and what does it mean? The idea of mutiny, to mutiny in language, I believe that the Irish writer has to, in a sense, mutiny against the English language because it is the language of our devastation, it is the language of our genocides, and so on and so forth. I believe we're also very capable of improving the English language. Okay, we've improved it a lot. It would be a terrible mixture of Anglo-Saxon and Danish only for the Irish and so on and so forth. So I really love language. I love words. I love playing with words. And I think that comes across quite a bit in the book and from what I heard in the thing. So the book is saying, you think about mutiny, as the overall idea of the book, and mutiny is a different thing to revolution and rebellion and hasn't really got any great claims like revolution has or rebellion might be. It's maybe a more spontaneous, natural or organic thing, maybe even done for its own sake only. Okay, maybe mutiny doesn't have to have a teleology, etc. Right? Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Vivi, are you?
Yeah.
Well, we have. Tell us, Vivi.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you very much for accepting the invitation again. It was a really, 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 really interesting interview. And it is our first and not the last interview in English. We want to come closer this to languages because literature is just one. We just have to break those barriers little by little. So Ulises, all my admiration for you. I'm a teacher of English, but I've never been able to translate anything. I always have secretly the Google Translator because every time with culture, time, age, a lot of other aspects that you and Dave tell us today in this interview. So thank you very much for this interview, for your work, and I hope you have you in the next interview. So thank you very much, Ulises. And to finish our episode, we ask Dave to choose a song to finish our episode. So please, Dave, tell us what song you choose to finish our episode, why, or whatever you want to add to that.
Well, as I said earlier on, Christy Moore would be one of my big inspirations and many other people's inspirations in the Irish arts. The song I chose is from his 1972 album Prosperous, and that was his second album. And I believe, the 70s was a fantastic decade for music, as we all know. But I believe it's one of the greatest albums of the 70s anywhere. Okay, the song I chose is a medley. In fact, it's a song called "The Ragtag Gypsy." Okay, which is in praise of nomadism. Okay, and just to remind you that the title of the excerpt you read earlier on is Kathleen is a word we'll never settle, and part of the book is this disagreement between the settled and the nomadic spirit of the human, and then the medley feeds into a piece on the uilleann pipes by Liam O'Flynn, who was one of our great uilleann pipers, who, along with poets, were put under martial law to be killed on sight after the Battle of Kinsale in 1603. And the piece is called Tuair Dom the Love, Give Me Your Hand, and it is basically the sound of freedom, right? That's how I will describe it. You can listen, and everybody can listen, and if you listen to this song and you leave it all the way through, then I guarantee that your soul will try to leave your body, and maybe it will succeed. Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Goodbye. Good night. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Sebastián. Muchísimas gracias, Viviana, por tus palabras. Very grateful to be here. Very honored. Thank you very much,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Ciao, ciao.
Chao, chao.
Chao.
Gracias.